advice given is for general information purposes. All legal cases are different, and you should seek the advice of your own attorney before acting or making decisions. No attorney-client privilege applies to communications on this show, and no attorney-client relationship is created by calling or writing in. Attorney Rominger practices only in Pennsylvania and maintains his primary office in Carlisle, Pennsylvania.
All right, we're back. 540-0580. Carl Rominger here. I guess Senator Brubaker is going to be joining us eminently, so as soon as he gets here, or imminently. He's eminence, but it's imminent. Why don't we get Steve on the air here? Steve, what's going on? Shane, do I have Steve? Steve. No Steve. All right, we'll go to Bill. Shane.
We can't hear you, Shane.
Do I have Bill or Steve?
Here comes Steve.
Okay, Steve.
Hey, now you got it, brother.
All right.
All right. Hey, question. What's the time frame as far as medical malpractice?
2 years from the date of injury, but if you couldn't discover it for a legitimate reason, then it tolls to the date of discovery, and then it would run from there.
That was one issue for me, but the main reason I was calling is for my mother. Right now she's in a problem where she's having, kind of like, dementia or Alzheimer's, you know what I mean? But it happened pretty abruptly, and it all started around this stupid Lipitor, believe it or not. So I heard they had the federal thing where they whatever the federal thing says, where they pulled off the market. What do they usually do in that circumstance?
Well, if there's a callback on a drug, you can find it online.
It was a federal decision, but evidently you can still get it. That's why I don't understand it.
Well, Lipitor is still prescribed regularly.
Yeah, and that's why I didn't understand it, because I just saw, my girlfriend showed me this commercial. She recorded, and it said that, that it was from the FDA. I guess I removed it because of something that was under.
Well, they put some warnings on it involving clotting and some, I think, stroking or something like that.
Well, my only concern is, if it comes back and it has to be something like that, because, she's had several tests on CAT scan, MRI, everything, and, I just heard this, and it's nothing obvious that the doctors will be able to find. And, I'm just trying to think if maybe it's associated with this. I don't know.
Yeah, brother, I guess what I would tell you to do is go to another doctor, get some background information, see what you got. And you might want to search for a firm that takes drug cases. But the hard part is always linking the two.
But does your office carry out medical malpractice?
We do medical malpractice, but something like that is a little outside of our range of expertise.
Well, this is for me, not personal. I was dealing with a doctor for it's been for 5 years, but it's been within, it's been almost 2 years. It'll be 2 years October that. Doctors had me in the hospital 5 times because of mixing medications and not knowing, and you know what I mean. So in other words, he's prescribing medications that aren't supposed to go together.
Right. Well, and then what I would do is strongly recommend come and talk to us off the air, and we'll see what we can do.
Okay, brother. Appreciate it, Carl.
All right, man. Take care. 540-0580. Carl Rominger here answering your legal questions on the air, and of course we're going to Old World Tobacco after the show, so be there about 3:30. You can join us for a cigar, get 10% off if you mention the show. You can say you heard it on WHP 580 or WLAN. And Senator Brubaker, we're really pleased and honored to have you here.
It's a real privilege for me to be with you, Carl and Mark.
How you doing? Senator?
I'm terrific. Thank you very much. It's great to be with you guys.
I saw your post this morning. You were reading to children?
I was. It's a program called Read Across America. It started a number of years back. It's really to bring awareness to preschool kids on how important reading is. And so you try to make reading fun, exciting, and turn kids on early on to reading, and it can really make a dramatic improvement in their lives.
There you go. With Dr. Seuss's birthday, I guess, was yesterday or the day before or something like that.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Well, high literacy rate is essential to a successful economy, and it's always surprising to me how many people out there don't have good reading and writing skills.
Yeah, that's true. And then, since you're chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, that's a nice little way of segueing into budget and so forth, and where your committee's taking a look at different things right now. Can you give us a kind of like a pulse on what we're doing here in the state?
I can give it a try. Pennsylvania, we have about $27 billion general fund budget, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania does. And our year ends the end of June. We're projected to end the year about $500 million in the hole inside of a $27 billion budget. We can't deficit spend. States can't deficit spend like the federal government does, and thank goodness for that. So we'll have to find some cuts inside of this year to make up that $500 million that we what's happening is we're bringing in less revenue than what was projected. We're spending about what we expected to spend, but we're bringing in less money.
And what's the
and
reason
then, of course,
for that? Do we
the
know?
governor just went first, as he does every year, with his budget address. We got that a couple of weeks ago. And now the General Assembly is listening to what the 13 million Pennsylvanians have to say about the governor's budget proposal. And generally speaking, after the governor makes his address, the General Assembly does hearings. I sit on the Appropriations Committee, and Chairman Jake Corman held 3 consecutive weeks of appropriation hearings to bring in the cabinet-level officials to defend the budget for their departments. So now we turn it over to the people, listen actively to the people, make sure we are understanding the kind of impacts, positive and negative impacts, this proposed budget will have on the people of Pennsylvania. And then in the end, we members of the General Assembly have to do an up or down vote on the budget as proposed. Now we have the opportunity to amend it, of course.
Now, what do you think has caused our decreased revenues? Is it just the economy still?
The economy is still a little soft. I mean, I only know the economy from what the state brings in, and the big three, of course, are property taxes for our schools, sales tax, and income tax. And it's off a little bit. So we looked at global insights in part to help put together a financial model on what the growth is going to be for next year. Mm-hmm. Some people are believing that Pennsylvania state revenues could grow as much as 3 to 4% over next year. Some people believe that's a dramatically overstated number. We need to make sure we get that number right. Otherwise, we'll be back in that budget deficit environment again the following year because we project revenues, and then we put together a budget that spends those projected revenues. So we need to get the projection right.
And
right. Go ahead, Carl. Sorry.
Yeah, and I think that's a critical issue, is getting the projection right, and it's very difficult to do because I think we're in so many uncharted territories right now, economically, both locally, United States, and then, of course, globally.
That's exactly right. Personally, I'd like to see the politics being taken out of the revenue estimate. That's why I voted in favor of an independent fiscal office, and that ultimately got approved by the General Assembly and signed by Governor Rendell in the last session. So we do have an independent fiscal office now for the first time in our Commonwealth's history, and they're going to play a large role in it. And they're supposed to, and I believe that they will, do their job in a very unbiased, professional manner. So let's get the projection right, and then spend and hopefully be on the conservative side of the projection, and spend accordingly.
It's funny. There should never be a time when we spend on the less than conservative side of it, but I know that the desire to spend in government is always so great. And obviously, even though I'm a Republican, I recognize that there's a lot that government spends on that we have to spend on.
Right. And I even, yesterday, I think Representative John Baer, also from this area, was speaking with Matt Briette on Durgan's program. And he was speaking about funding for education. And, it amazes me when I read the paper how school districts and school boards talk about, I can't believe our funding's being cut. Because quite frankly, you've been told this for the last 5 to 7 years that you're going to get less. And to prepare for it, there shouldn't be a storm coming that you don't know about. But I was amazed with what Senator Baer had said, where I guess the way the state funding formula happens for school districts, regardless of the census, the student count in a district, they still get the same amount of money, even though their districts might be shrinking per pupil, where like in the central PA region, our census is expanding, but some of the other school districts, call it the outside the T, as we say, are still getting the same kind of funding, and that kind of pulls money away from districts that should otherwise get it. Would you agree with that, Senator?
Well, Mark, I think you're onto something. We definitely need an adjustment in how we fund our schools. There was a pretty good study. Again, it was portrayed to be unbiased. I believe that it was. And that study showed that it attempted to link gross funding of a school district on per pupil basis, and there's about 400% variation in the gross amount of dollars going to some District 1 versus District 2. And then that study attempted to build a correlation between that and test scores, and there was not a direct correlation. So there's a whole lot more to test scores, as we all know, than simply just throwing money at schools. So we need to be strategic. We need to be very, very thoughtful. We need to get the politics out of it. Everyone supports a fantastic education system, so we have no disagreement on the value. Education is our number one spending item. There's about 29 major spending categories in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and the top 4 make up about 90% of our gross spending. Number 1, education. Number 2, welfare. Number 3, corrections. And number 4, debt. Throw all that together, and that's about 90% of our spending.
Go through that list again.
Go ahead, Carl.
Go through that list again.
Sure. Number 1 is education.
Okay.
Number 2 is welfare. Number 3 is corrections. And number 4 is debt service.
And it's interesting that 3 and 4 are things you would really rather not have to spend. At least arguably 1 and 2 go somewhere to benefit somebody. Corrections, unfortunately, is a necessary evil, but it'd be great if we didn't have to spend all that money either.
Well, I'm a big believer in I've toured a number of different prisons, with prison guards. The United States of America has about 4% of the world's population and 25% of the world's incarcerated.
Right.
Wow.
So we have a lock-em-up mentality in this country. And what we need to ask ourselves is, are we doing it the right way? Everyone agrees if a criminal is a threat to society, then jail or prison is a place for them to be. But there's an awful lot of people in prison that are not a threat to society, and potentially some portion of those people ought to be open for alternatives. And our recidivism rate, recidivism is a word that's used for when somebody's in prison, comes out of prison, and ultimately goes back. Our recidivism rate is way too high. We have way too many reoffenders. So we're not correcting behaviors when people are in the correction system. Now,
Senator,
say,
we got to jump to break here. Can we pick that up when we come back with you?
You bet.
All right. See you guys after the break. Hey, welcome back. Carl Rominger here, 540-0580. If you have a question for Senator Brubaker, feel free to call in and we'll see what it is. Senator, you were telling us about the budget and the largest single items. And I think we were talking about
recidivism in prisons and such.
Recidivism in prisons. And that's a hot-button political issue. Do we have him?
Yeah, and I'm sure you had discussions with our own Lancaster County commissioners on that, because the elephant in the room here in Lancaster is, what do we do about our own prison? If we build one, is it almost full by the time we build it? Or do we look at other kind of reentry programs, or a prison that is of lesser offenses, say for people who just can't pay their child support and they can't get a hearing in front of a judge, so they sit in prison for 60 days, 90 days when, they're not the violent person. However, they're skirting their responsibilities. What say you about that?
Well, you're both right. It's a very controversial topic. I do want to compliment the people that are in our correction system, our full-time employees, that county-wide and state. I think they're doing as good a job as they could possibly do with the resources that they have. But the challenge they have is one of overcrowding. And when you have an overcrowded situation, you have some potential liabilities, and we want to certainly avoid that. Inside of Pennsylvania's correction system, Mark referenced our county jails. Counties generally referred to as jails. The state facilities are generally referred to as prisons. So the state has very little oversight responsibility at the county level, at the jail level. And the state has a tremendous amount of oversight to our state-level prisons. And
it's interesting.
Many people believe that we need to do sentencing differently than what we have done historically. But again, we need to keep a focus on two things. One, keeping the cost to the taxpayer down. It costs us about $40,000 to incarcerate a person for 1 year. You can get an awful lot of counseling or whatever that person might need, assuming they're not a threat to society, in exchange for those dollars. So there is,
right.
and there's examples of other states, that Wisconsin being one of them, that has dramatically changed their correction policy. Our number of inmates in Pennsylvania has continued to increase, where other states implemented certain new sentencing guidelines. Some of those states, the number of people going into their correctional facilities has gone down dramatically. We need to take a look at those.
You know, Senator, the other problem we have in Pennsylvania, it's kind of unique, is the corrections authorities don't have the final say at the state level on who gets paroled. Instead, that's a separate board of parole. And I'm not sure that creates the most efficient, streamlined system that some of the other states have, where they can manage their prison inmate population, you know, kind of under one umbrella, rather than depending on some independent group to say whether they can release this prisoner or when he or she's ready for release.
Well, Carl, you said efficiency and streamlining. I think those are two real important words. And we not only need to apply that to corrections, but in my opinion, we need to apply that to all facets of our very large bureaucracy of state government. And I'm the chairman of finance. Finance oversees revenue. Some of our computer systems are still on the old COBOL system, which is you could help me, but I believe those computer systems go back to the 70s. It's absolutely horrific. Now we're doing a great job at getting some of those systems upgraded, but we're not doing it comprehensively. And we're not doing it comprehensively because, of course, there's a large initial capital outlay to make all that happen.
Yeah, and we see it in the court side of things. Pennsylvania Supreme Court AOPC, we still don't have civil dockets online, for instance. And we can't do electronic filing uniformly across the state here in Pennsylvania. Federal government's had that at the federal court level for many years now, and it's very efficient.
Well, when you talk about efficiency and streamlining, I like those words, and we in state government, certainly federal government, different level than where I work. The federal government and state government ought to be all about identifying, looking at private sector efficiencies and streamlining that have occurred in other sectors, and bring those time-tested, proven techniques into state government. We don't do that enough, in my opinion.
Probably, and I don't know what the solution would be, because it's hard to, incentivize that at the state level, and there's a lot of great workers, but the system itself, and I'm going to bust on the unions for a second, create a internal structure that sometimes makes it very difficult for anybody to fire anybody. And it's actually to the point where when people call me up and they say I have a falling out with my employer, and my employer is to Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, I say, before you hire a lawyer, just grieve through the union, because you're probably not going to lose your job, no matter what you did. So I don't know how you react to that, but
I hear that with some frequency. I have a very limited number of employees, direct employees inside of my Senate office, but every one of those employees gets an annual review, and we ought to be, everybody in state government and federal government ought to at least be getting a thorough, complete, unbiased, professionally done annual review, and it ought to be accurate. And if that person, if that employee has deficiencies, those deficiencies ought to be well documented on that review process, and it ought to be done at least annually. I mean, there's certainly an awful lot of businesses are now doing it twice a year and 4 times a year to identify deficiencies and making sure people are being propped up and educated, helped to correct their deficiencies, and if not, move them out. We don't do enough of that.
And again, I mean, it's easy to talk about, and it's easy for us to point the finger, but I think there's overall, I do interface with a lot of state agencies on a regular basis myself as a lawyer, and I do find that most of the people I deal with are pretty good at what they do. Senator, let me turn it to a slightly lighter topic for a second.
Here we go. Let's go.
We're going down to Old World Tobacco after the show here. Do you have any recommendations for a cigar?
Well, actually, the people that know me well know I do enjoy a cigar every once in a while, and you can't go wrong at Old World. Every single product they have on the shelf, I think, is a good quality product. So I'm a little hesitant to name out one or two particular brands for fear I'll offend some great companies that are.
We lost the senator. All right. Oh, they had a power outage on the Glenn Beck show yesterday. Yeah, we'll go to break.
That's fine.
All right, welcome back, guys. 540-0580. We lost the senator there to a power outage. We just chit-chatted with him. I said he didn't have to come back on because who knows. I would love to have him back on, but I knew he had to go. We just didn't get a chance to say goodbye there. But, again, thank you, Senator Brubaker, for coming on. Shane is telling me that they have a little power outage up there in Harrisburg at the studio, so we're flying a little bit blind right now.
I guess RJ didn't pay the bills.
RJ didn't pay the bill. Oh, internet's back up.
Ooh, look at that.
Booyah,
they got the generator going. All right.
Got the generator going, Shane? What happened? You don't want to chime in, Shane? Tell us really what's going on up there? All right. He's so shy.
He's taking a phone call.
He's taking a phone call. Oh, you can't do two things at once? Didn't we pay you to do two things at once? All right. Anyhow, I want to talk to you guys about House Bill 1575 of Session 2011, which will be last year. It was referred to committee June 29th. It would amend the Domestic Relations Code. Basically, it would rewrite the PFA, or Protection from Abuse Act, law in one very important way and say, when a temporary order is issued, you're going to get a hearing within 10 days. If you don't want the hearing within 10 days, that's okay. You can put it out, give yourself time to prepare or whatever. But if that 10-day order is entered and you don't get a hearing within 10 days, then that temporary order dies, goes away, and can't be enforced. And am I summarizing that correctly?
With prejudice, and they can't reintroduce the same language with a PFA.
With prejudice. So you're now safe, like safe harbor, so they can't just serially file.
Correct. And what can't happen is if the 10 days runs out and you're there for your hearing,
Yeah.
and the 10 days ran out, the Domestic Violence Coalition can't run upstairs to file another PFA on your behalf and come back down and say,
Gotcha. No serial filing.
Yeah.
And actually, we've seen that in the criminal system before, where district attorneys have had a charge dismissed. Guy's going to be released from prison, so they immediately refile the charge and then set the bail again. And the charge gets dismissed, and they refile the charge because that's not double jeopardy. And that was being abused down in Philadelphia at one point. So the Supreme Court, somebody had finally come out with an opinion sort of suggesting that that wasn't always a good idea. But in the PFA realm, you're right, you could serially file. Now, I won one the other day. We took a PFA to hearing, and my client was found, as people would say in the colloquial sense, not guilty. But what the judge basically said is the plaintiff did not sustain her burden of showing by preponderance of the evidence that PFA would apply. However, he did it without prejudice for her to refile, meaning she could put the exact same language in again, although the judge did indicate it would be the same decision without additional evidence of subsequent acts. So that would be fair. I mean, if something new happens, I think you always get a new bite at the apple, right?
Correct. But this is going to prevent individuals from waiting 2 years and 3 years before they get into their first hearing on their PFA.
Right. So you won't have to wait years to have a hearing.
And in Pennsylvania, 71% of all cases that have a hearing held on the PFA are found to be false and dismissed.
71% of all PFAs that have a hearing are dismissed.
Correct.
Interesting.
So if you take it to trial or you take it to the hearing, odds are in your favor.
Well, but that's the interesting thing. I mean, I'm kind of a filter. I had a guy in my office one time, and he says, oh, that PFA is all a lie. I didn't strangle her with the phone cord. I used my hands. And I said, that's not a defense. All right, anyhow.
That's not funny.
It's not funny, but it shows you the ones that don't make it into a hearing. So obviously there's a filter there.
Correct.
When a guy comes in and says, yes, I did do this, or yes, this did happen, or there's an underlying criminal charge, for instance, sometimes we won't take the hearing because it's under a consent order. So I would expect the hearings to have a decent success rate, but 71% is a very high success rate.
Well, a district attorney in California recently decided they weren't accepting no more plea bargains from any of the Domestic Violence Coalition that was there. And in his area in California, a PFA gets a jury trial by his peers. And he tried
Probably put this guy on a microphone.
He tried. He tried every case in California, and at that point in time, 78% of all cases that he tried with a jury trial were found to be dismissed with prejudice because there wasn't enough evidence of any wrongdoing.
It's very interesting. All right, guys, we're going to move on here. 540-0580. Jim, what's going on?
Hey, Carl. Hey, I was wondering, when you guys file a claim with an insurance company, how often do you get what you ask for?
Depends what we ask for, I guess. And what I mean by that is, if we're just going for property damage, we usually have a pretty hard estimate, so we're going to get that pretty often. Other times we're looking for policy limits. So I have a case right now that Drew in my office is doing. His car accident, he got $15,000, but that's the policy limit. So we knew it, we asked for it, we got it. The more nebulous ones are when somebody's injured, there's a $100,000 policy. We're guessing the case is worth $25,000, and the insurance company thinks it's worth $15,000. Sometimes we'll get closer to our $25,000, and sometimes they'll get closer to their $15,000.
So injury, it's what now?
Well, just saying it's a little more nebulous sometimes.
Oh, okay.
So you say your back is injured. The doctor agrees that your back is injured, but it probably should resolve, but you may have some residual pain, but it's not really stopping you from doing anything. But then some days you don't feel like doing so. I mean, how do you put a financial value on that? And a jury does that ultimately. So what we might ask for versus what an insurance company is going to come down to would be very little different.
Okay, so that's the same thing with pain and suffering for like a dog attack or something like that?
Yeah. And in fact, with a dog attack, dog bites, pain, suffering, I mean, they can be very valuable claims or they can be not so valuable claims, all depending on all the factors that are in the case. And then you have one more overlay, which is liability. So for instance, with a dog attack, there may be an argument that the owner didn't know that the dog was vicious. And if that's the case, no matter how injured you are, the dollar value might be zero that you're entitled to. So we have to discount perhaps a lot of damage for a lack of liability.
Okay.
So what if it's an aggressive breed? In other words, the reasonable
Pennsylvania
man
doesn't seem to recognize an aggressive breed theory all by itself.
They don't?
We don't have a per se.
Yeah.
We don't have like pit bulls are dangerous in this state or something like that.
Okay, I was going to say, what about a dog that has histories over the years that has...
Oh, that helps a lot. I had a case where the kid got bit.
Not an aggressive individual dog, but an aggressive breed.
Yeah, so aggressive breed may be a factor, but it's never going to get you there by itself. It goes to the individual dog in Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because there's very obedient, very nice cuddly pit bulls out there. It all depends on the owner and the environment and the upbringing. However, like, for example, I belong to a local dog park here, Overlook Dog Park in the Manheim Township, and there's a sign that basically says no aggressive breeds. However, you can't get into the dog park unless you go to the township, file your shot records, you have your dog license from the county, which by law you're supposed to have a dog license, unless you can show the paperwork that you have all that, and also pay the fee of, since I'm not a resident of Manheim Township, I pay $65, I think, and then I get my key fob. If you don't meet that criteria, you can't get in, and you could actually lose your rights even if you paid, if they see you opening the gate and allowing somebody in who hasn't filed the necessary paperwork. That's grounds for termination of your key fob. So I think there's enough laws out there, but someone like Carl would definitely be someone you might want to run that past, or someone in his office.
He's got my case already. It's been almost a year, and I was just kind of curious as to what I could be looking roughly for.
Well, if it's the case I'm thinking of, is this one Drew's working on?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you guys are getting pretty close.
Okay.
Why don't you give us a call Monday or Tuesday, and I'll give you the details off the air because we don't want to talk hard numbers here.
Right. Okay, great.
All right, brother.
Good talking with you.
Let's see. Alan. Alan, you're on the air.
It's a real service that you offer the public. I bought an item at a specialty store about 3 years ago. They had given me the wrong item as far as what I was looking for. I took it back, and they gave me store credit. There were some more purchases and so forth, and in the end, I ended up with a store credit of approximately $100. Now, this is 3 years ago. And as I say, it's a specialty store. It's not something that I do a lot. I had called and asking if they can turn that into cash. They indicated no, that we can't. Is there any obligation of them to at some point offer that, or is this just a policy that they can establish and you're stuck
I don't
with?
think a store has a absolute duty to take a return unless depending on what policy they have posted. So and it'd be the policy at the time that controlled. That makes sense?
Okay. Yeah, I understand that. As far as at that time, it was only a store credit.
Credit, right. So
Okay.
they probably got you there.
Okay.
What I would
All right,
do, just thinking out loud here to help you out, if you have a store credit, say for $100, and you know somebody else that might want to use the store, you might be able to sell it to somebody, for $80 or $90 or something like that, and say, hey, I'll give you $80 for $80 cash. I'll give you $100 credit at store Y.
Sure, Carl, are you interested in purchasing any? Oh no, just a joke. Okay, well, I appreciate the advice, and have a good day.
Contact me off the air. I got to go to break, guys. 540-0580. Carl Rominger broadcasting live from 1000 North Prince Street here at Coldwell Banker Select Professionals. If you guys need a realtor, come see us. 540-0580. We're back. Okay. I was just listening to the Rush audio. So I guess he said, and I can't really play it because I'm not the right kind of computer to feed it in here. But then he added, I guess, after he called this girl a slut and a prostitute, he said, if we're going to pay for your contraceptives and that's pay for you to have sex, we want something for it. We want you to post the videos online so we can all watch. So,
yeah, he went a little far, didn't he?
He might have gone a little far. Well, hey, he's Rush Limbaugh. Now, they say he's losing some advertisers. Some of his advertisers are pulling out. I guarantee you there's a train of about 1,000 people who've been waiting to advertise on that show for years. So I doubt he's going to go broke anytime soon.
And he's got millions of listeners.
Oh, a gazillion listeners. And I would tell you that he's probably going to lose 3 listeners over it. And probably get 300 million more back because everybody's going to want to, it's going to be like the Howard Stern effect. People are going to listen just to be mad.
Let's just think about Monday's show. I mean, Rominger and Associates could advertise on Monday's show. Just think of how many people are going to hear that. That's like a Super Bowl ad because everyone's going to want to hear his rant on what he said or what the news organization said or what he thinks about his advertisers leaving. So this gets to be like the train wreck everybody wants to stop and look at.
I need a call center to handle the kind of calls you would get from advertising on the Rush Limbaugh show.
That's true.
I mean, that's a simple answer. It's always nice to... Oh, Obama, yeah.
Right before he went on the air, yeah.
You can't... That's true. The president probably actually secretly listens to Rush while he works out in the morning with Michelle Obama.
He probably has somebody in the White House listen to it if he doesn't do it.
Oh, they listen to it. The NSA probably listens to it. They probably listen to this show too. So let's say keywords: plutonium, uranium, Iran.
Hi, this is Paul Chase. I'm on the air.
540-0580. Let's try to figure out what's going on here. By the way, guys, we are broadcasting live from 1000 North Prince Street, the home of Coldwell Banker Select Professionals here in Lancaster. They serve all the central Pennsylvania area. So if you need to list some real estate, sell some real estate, or you want to buy some real estate, I sincerely expect you to give Coldwell Banker a call and tell him Carl Rominger sent you. To get you some kind of discount. No. Also, if you get a chance, we want to thank Mark for being with us. And you can get him to send you this really neat little key financial data for 2012. It's a little sheet. It's 2-sided. It's got all kinds of cheat sheets on it that will help you with your finances. It's got a handsome picture of Mark on it.
Yeah, no.
You can put your thumb over that and hold it and still see all the important data.
This is from a man who wears yellow socks.
And Mark's located at 110 East King Street in Lancaster, PA, 509-4521. Are you making fun of my yellow socks?
To each his own, Carl. I never really saw yellow socks on a man before.
Well,
those your wife's?
I don't have a wife, so no. Jeff, you're on the air.
Hey, Carl, how you doing?
Good, brother. What's going on?
Hey, I got a question. Reader's Digest version. I've got a lot of unsecured debt that I've been paying for years and lost. Been working 2 jobs and the one company pulled out, so I am severely up against it. And I wanted your opinion on debt settlement service versus possible bankruptcy to satisfy these debts.
We talked about this the other day, I think when I was in the Durgan show. There certainly is benefits to trying to negotiate the debts and get them paid off and potentially getting some debt relief. You just have to be careful because when you go into a bankruptcy, you get kind of a safe harbor on the tax consequences. So if you just write the credit card company and they forgive $10,000 in debt, they'll report that to the IRS on a special form and you'll be taxed on that debt forgiveness. On the other hand, if you go into a bankruptcy, generally speaking, there won't be a tax consequence, but say generally speaking. On the other hand, if you don't go into bankruptcy, the IRS does have kind of a form you can do in a worksheet, and if you can prove you're insolvent to their satisfaction, there may be some relief from the tax on the debt relief.
So are these companies, though, that you hear? I mean, I see them and I hear them, and I mean, are they?
I would go see a bankruptcy attorney because a lot of times they are going to either walk you into a bankruptcy or handle the debt negotiation for you short of filing a bankruptcy. And that way you got somebody local and accountable.
Okay. Yeah, if it's a back tax issue, you can call the IRS. You fall on a sword, admit your defeat, and so forth, and they'll be willing to work with you too.
This is all unsecured debt. This is
unsecured debt. Okay.
It's all unsecured debt.
Yeah, I would recommend seeing a bankruptcy attorney and letting them handle it, give you the best advice.
That sounds like good advice.
All right, my friend, take care.
All right, thanks, Carl. Bye.
John, what do you want to say about Rush Limbaugh?
Listen, I enjoy your show. Let me say that up front. I travel a lot, especially on Saturdays. But I did catch the riff on Rush Limbaugh. And, your partner had said, I'm sure somebody at the White House is listening to him. Absolutely they are. I mean, in my opinion, and I listen to a lot, I follow politics a lot, whether you love him or hate him, the fact of the matter is he is without question the most accurate political analyst in America today. I believe that. And I think even people on the other side of his politics would grudgingly agree to that with you. And he could be a little bombastic. Maybe he was a little rough on this Georgetown student. But, I mean, the absurdity of her testifying before Congress and the absurdity of her argument is going to generate that kind of backlash, I think.
Well, yeah.
I'd
like to testify before Congress on contraceptive and birth control. That'd be great.
Yeah, where does it ever end? Especially
I got a really good story to tell about it.
Yeah. But, just the absurdity to have somebody who's going to a school that costs $45,000 a year in tuition and additional monies for room and board to go before Congress, I don't know what her qualifications are, and cry about how absolutely breathtakingly and heartbreaking it is to see her fellow students and herself struggle to buy birth control. It's absurd.
It's as contrived as you could make it.
Yeah, and a friend of mine called into Planned Parenthood to see what it would cost. If you are totally indigent, it's free, and if you have the money, it's like $10.
Oh,
so it's not outrageous.
Now it's kind of funny because everybody that listens to talk radio, WHP 580 and WLAN, is probably not a big fan of Planned Parenthood, but 1 in 6 Americans, I believe, gets birth control through them.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about the abortion services. I'm talking about the condoms and the pill and everything else.
Yeah.
And
right.
Ironically, those things are pretty cheap and free and easily available already. The policy issues, should the government be paying for it or giving it to you for free? And we were talking earlier, that's the slippery slope.
Yeah.
Next, they're going to buy your food, your yellow socks, whatever.
I think the real absurdity of it is
the haircut.
That leaders, either of the party's leaders in Congress, would even
have this, what is essentially a stage show, waste of time when we have such incredibly important issues.
Well, that was the big beef during Darrell Isa's conference when he had the bishops and clergy in to talk about the religious aspects of the controversial Obama administration thing.
Guys, we're out of time. I got to let you go. We're going over to Old World Tobacco out on Route 30 down here in Lancaster. We've been broadcasting live from Coldwell Banker Select Professionals. Make sure you get a hold of Mark Virginus. It's 509-4521. And, of course, anytime you call me, I can get you in contact with him as well. Guys, we're out to Old World. We'll see you there to smoke some cigars, get 10% off. See you in a few minutes.